Getting back to inflation, can you talk more about the transitory factors holding down inflation, how significant they are, and why you think those factors will pass?
Sure. Well, I would just mention a couple. Let me say, I don't mean to diminish concerns about too low inflation, but I think there's good reason to think that these low readings are particularly influenced by some transitory factors. One that I would mention is portfolio management services, which would tend to go down when asset prices go down with a lag. And so when asset prices went back up, probably there'll be a swing around there, positive contribution. Other ones that get mentioned are things like apparel, and apparel prices were very, very low. There was a change in the methodology. And another one is, airfares. There are many little things. So we don't know until we see, but there's reason to think that those would be transient and would turn around. And another way to look at it is there are models that look at inflation in different ways, like not models, but measures like the Dallas trim mean, as I mentioned. So trim mean, it cuts off the big movements on the upside and the downside and looks at just the mean movements in inflation of various product categories and service categories. And it didn't go down at all. It's at 2%, or it's at, I don't know whether it went down, it was above that, but it's at 2% now. So there's reason to think that these will be transient. We, of course, will be watching very carefully to see that that is the case. I would point to the case of cell phone services. Many of you will remember in March of 2017, there was a very low reading of for cell phone services, mobile phone services, and it was kind of a price war, and it dragged down core inflation for a full year, but it did not look like something that would be repeated. And we kind of thought so and said so, and then sure enough, in 2018, we had those months of 2% inflation. So again, we'll have to see here. We're going to be watching, really, I'd like to say we're going to be watching inflation carefully to see that these things are transient. And I'll end by saying we are strongly committed to the 2% inflation objective.
Okay, Nancy.
Just following up, Chair Powell, Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. You were saying if inflation does stay low and these low inflation rates are not transient, you said a couple times you'll take that into account with monetary policy. How specifically will you take that into account?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there's so many other variables. I mean, we ultimately there are many variables to be taken into account at any given time, but that's part of our mandate. Stable prices is half of our mandate, and we've defined that as 2%. So we'd be concerned, and we'd take it into account.
So, cut in interest rates would be.
I can't really be any more specific than what I've said.